The biggest revolution in betting in the last few years was the introduction of BETFAIR, the betting exchange, in the year 2000, where you can back a horse to win and lay it to lose. Are you in favour of BETFAIR, and do you think they're giving 40 million a year donating to the racing industry over the next 5 years? That's an agreement with the BHA. Is the way forward?
Well, I think it needs to be a more formal arrangement, an agreement, because they can stop it at any time. And I don't think they should be able to do that. I think this is one where...
I think it's guaranteed. I think it's guaranteed.
Well, I would like to see it firmer than what I believe it is at the present time. But what I say is this is an opportunity, or should a circumstance, where it's quite clear that the horse has bolted. And the only thing I would say, what worries me greatly, is if people who are betting to lose are some of the people that's involved in ownership, or quite close to the people in ownership. And I think we need to have a rigid system which protects the ordinary punter against that. And as I say, I would say the horse has bolted, it's gone, it's there. We need more guarantees of more money, and perhaps the price they're paying at the present time isn't as great as it should be. But ultimately, it's there. We should garner the resources from it and move forward. But we should keep a very, very close eye on what's occurring there.
Are racecourses now too powerful?
No, I don't think they are. I mean, at the end of the day, they have a product. Without the racecourse, you don't have racing. The same can be said of jockeys, owners, trainers.
And punters.
Yeah, and punters itself. Now, we have to recognise, this is why when I said when you need a new authority, it needs to have some kind of a recognition of all those factors. Some of the factors are recognised in that. But as I say, racecourses have to work in partnership with it. If you do it, they'll get more out of it. They'll guarantee their product for longer and greater if they work in partnership for that. And but there've been a lot of years where they've just been thrown biscuits, and they've got fed up with it. And who can wonder, why they're doing that? It's very, very straightforward that they haven't been treated as well as they should. But I say this: it's not all racecourses that are in that category. Of course, there was a group of racecourses which are now the greatest group of racecourses, get the most televised events, are the largest, have the best facilities and all the rest of it, which used to be called Racecourse Holdings Trust, i.e. charity, that's the impression, now called Jockey Club Racecourses. Significant difference in that. And I challenge them on this on frequent occasions, because most of those courses, not all of them, and I exclude Ascot from this at all, because they've just done a recent redevelopment of that, and not a penny has come from the taxpayer at all. £370 million of the Queen's own money that's actually handled that. But all the other major racecourses have been paid for or given out of public funds. And they have then awarded the best tricks, the best televised events, the best meetings, the best largesse from the levy to build all these magnificent facilities. And I argue, where is the trust? Where's the trust gone to? It's a racecourse holding now of the Jockey Club Incorporate. Now, I'm not sure how that was allowed to happen, because I believe, like the tote, investments there were made from ordinary people who bet in the industry, who worked in the industry, who worked on racecourses, all the rest. And I think they have a part ownership in that. And it's not just to see it on the telly on a Saturday afternoon when the major TV events are taking place. There are 250, 300 people in a private club in London. And like Parliament, there are many people who come to Parliament who sometimes after a few years people wish that they hadn't, because they got in terrible trouble. Now, I look at the Jockey Club and I look at some of its members, past and perhaps one or two present, who might wake up at 4 o'clock one morning and say, how can I sort out my financial difficulties? And there you've got a product which is worth a couple of £1 billion. And if you divide 250, 300 into £2 billion, that comes out with a tidy amount. Now, I'm not saying it will happen.
Well, what would they do?
Could happen.
What should they do if this body does come about?
Well, if there's no intent for the members of the Jockey Club to personally own the shares into that £2 billion, then it should be set up and established and created and returned into a trust holding which is owned by the whole of the racing industry, and there should be a board from the whole of the industry, including the BHA, all of that incorporated on that board legally. And as I say, this is many people think that things were sorted out when we had a BHA. I think one of the tricks that were missed was this. This is a huge amount of money. When you think about the tote and how much the tote was offered for sale, £400 million. This is an asset of £2 billion. 2 billion, and without any shadow of a doubt, most of the money went from public resources or in via the levy on money spent by taxpayers. The depletion of owners, jockeys in certain aspects of the sport, all of it is very, very worrying indeed. And if you look at the work that's been done by the TBA,
Thoroughbred
Breeders Association, that is tremendous. Their new elite breeding program is holding people up and getting people to invest money in mares to be bred in Britain and kept in Britain, and that's phenomenal, and all credit to them. They have many other things up their sleeves which they're going to try, but you know, there is a drift away from ownership, and that's because of price, and you know, with the value of horses, some horses falling, and the price to actually participate, people are saying, I just can't afford it. Now,
but the price is going down, though, at the sales, aren't they, generally?
Yeah, they're going down, but it's not the buying of the horse, it's the keeping and the racing of the horse, which is the expensive side of it. And I say this, you know, it is bizarre, it's peculiar that in every other sport in Britain where the sportsmen and women are participating, they get in expenses, coverage, payments, a whole range of things, whether it be cycling, swimming, athletics, or whatever, all of the car racing or whatever. And here we have an industry which generates a minimum of £2 million on every race which is run in Britain off course. And yet the people who in that race, which could be run for £2,000-3,000 or whatever, have had to pay their entry fees at various stages all the way through. They've had to pay their transport of their horse and staff up to the racecourse itself. They've had to pay for the jockey to ride in the race, and they've had to pay any overnight that may occur and any veterinary costs which go with that. Now, that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. £2 million spent over there, and here are owners who are shelling out all of this on top of already paying at least £10,000-12,000 at the lower end of the scale for keeping their horse in training for a year. Now, that has got to be addressed. It's no good bookmakers, you know, saying that can't. We've seen the outrage in racing already, where owners are saying we're not going to race in certain types of racing because of the money offered, and we're fed up of being treated like second-class citizens when we're providing the product which is gearing all of this money, and I think they're right.
Many of your colleagues in Parliament are campaigning against the number of betting shops in the high street. They don't accept that there used to be 15,000 betting shops 25, 30 years ago. It's now down to about 8,500.
Well, the first thing is that many of my colleagues, whether they be Labour, Liberal, Conservative, Nationalist or whatever, don't have the faintest idea of how many betting shops there were in the high street before. Yeah. There was always a lot of bookmakers in the high street, and that was generally regarded positively, because before that there used to be backstreet bookmakers who were doing it illegally.
And there were very few ways of betting. You could only bet horses, greyhounds and the football balls. Now the internet, 24 hours a day, you can satisfy your need to bet.
And on top of that, these new betting shops are considerably better than some of the ones that were around before. You can get soft drinks in, you can get hot drinks in it, and so on and so forth.
There's even toilets.
That's right, the facility. So there's been great improvement. But I tell you where it worries me, John, where in the key high street modes you can see 7, 8, 9, 10. Take Walworth Road in London, which is quite near Westminster. Now, you come down there from the top to the bottom, there is every kind of bookmaking shop on either side of the road, right away to the bottom, and it's about 3/4 of a mile in distance. Now, very clearly, there is a competition going on there between the hard-end bookmakers, the higher-end bookmakers, the William Hills, the Corals, the Ladbrokes, the Betfairs, and all the rest of it in there. But there are far too many bookmakers shops in that road, and I think commercially that'll sort itself out
exactly.
eventually.
Market forces.
But there is a problem.
Nobody goes in them, Alan.
No, but there is a problem where you've got in a road certain of those big bookmakers with 2 or 3 shops in the same road, and you're saying, well, some of them are even on the same side of the road, by the way. Now, These are not about competition with the high street, only about competition with the high street competitors. They're also about another thing, because they're lowering the amount of money which is coming down in those individual betting shops. And when they get below a certain level, they have a different rate of taxation which they pay. Everybody knows that. It's one way to pay less tax and to invest in a property which is then goes with the number of shops that you've got. So it's a way of, if you like, spreading your load and transferring what would normally be paid in the industry back into your own business. Now, I'm not blaming them for doing that, but whether it's a practice that can be condoned or not, but you can't wrap that up and say all betting shops and all high streets are like that, because they're not.
We're talking about quangos, government commissions, the gambling authority, the gambling commission. Should they be done away with? All they are, brought in by Labour as a bureaucracy that's stifling the industries, people snooping around everything like that. The laws can be made that bookmakers don't not pay punters and etc. Why have a gambling?
Well, I'm going to offer a different way, John, because I'm going to say, let's get rid of all them, but let's do it differently. Let's look for the punter. Let's look for the customer. Let's look for those people who work in the industry. We have a thing called the National Consumers Council. It looks after everything from gas prices, electricity prices, rental prices, and all the rest of it.
They're all shooting up.
That's right, all over the place. And genuinely, what you could do within the bounds of that, you could create a Consumers Council for racing, if you like, a punters commission. And they could look for illegal betting, they could look for bad practices, they could look like the National Consumers Council does at the moment on every single law which goes through Parliament, whether it's about street lighting, whether it's about taxation, whether it's about practices, working practices, looks at all of them, and they can look at it and say, well, how is that going to affect the people who work in the racing industry, in betting shops? How is it going to affect the customers? Is it in their favour or is it not? And I've been saying this for years. The people nobody seems to care about in the racing industry are these people who actually invest in it every week and pay for everybody in its livelihood, which is the punter. That's the people who need to be looked after, along with the jockeys, the stable staff, and all the rest of it. And they're always the forgotten tribe. And I say this, you don't have to have a gambling commission. You can have a National Consumers Council with a section of it which is devoted to racing, gambling, and the rest of it. And that includes the punters' protection. The industry can't just stand still and make its way. We need people to be trained in the industry. We've seen people who've been injured who work on stalls, for instance, who didn't have a day's training. We've seen the decline in national hunt jockeys, which is getting very, very worrying and serious.
Yeah, plenty there. Amateurs would come in and take over. Sam Whaley-Cohen, fantastic.
Well, yeah, you get occasional lad like that who can come in because he's got enough free time and enough money to do it. But I'm not talking about Sam Whaley-Cohen. I'm not talking about the input of people coming in from Ireland in large numbers to be junior jockeys or senior jockeys, to have retainers and so forth. I'm talking about the people who work in the stables and hopefully get a ride or two in their careers or go on to be jockeys themselves. The people who are with the trainers. Trainers are telling me now they're finding it very, very difficult to recruit from within Britain the level of staff that they need and the right kind of staff that they need. And all credit to the two racing schools which operate at the present time. They're doing a fantastic job. But we have to help. We have, in all these ways we're going around saying to people we need training programs to get people back into work. We need to be going into Britain and saying to these these schools, colleges, look, there is an industry here which is good, but we can only do that if we create the terms and conditions, which means that they have a future and they'll be safe and they'll be paid to a degree that we'd all accept is what should be the norm. But as I say, there's much to do. But there's lots of money around. There's lots of opportunity to build the industry up into the greatness it once saw in the past. People who don't believe that should look, as I've said, to things like the Premier League, should look to see how many people turned out to the Paralympics and Olympics, look to see how many people turn out to all these sporting events right away up to Brazil and in other sports connected with that over the years. If we don't do what I'm saying, we at Brazil next time round will be half the size we are at the present time, and that's not good for racing.
Sir Alan Meale, you've been a thought-provoking monarch for the day. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.